The rain battered the windows of the sprawling Denver suburban house, each drop a tiny fist against my resolve. I was 24, non-binary, and broke, house-sitting for my boss's family to scrape together rent money. By midnight, I was alone with my thoughts, until the front door slammed open, and he walked in. I'm Riley Carter, a barista at a hipster coffee shop in Lodo, where my boss, Ethan Caldwell, runs a tight ship. Ethan's family was on a 2-week ski trip in Aspen, leaving me to water plants, feed their cat, and keep their McMansion from burning down. It was a sweet gig for someone like me, barely scraping by in a city that chewed up dreamers and spat out cynics. I'd moved to Denver from a small town in Nebraska, chasing freedom to be myself, non-binary, queer, unapologetic. But freedom came with a price. A cramped studio apartment and a bank account that laughed at my ambitions. That night, I was sprawled on their leather couch, scrolling through X on my cracked phone, when the door's crash jolted me upright. My heart thundered as footsteps echoed through the foyer. The cat, Muffin, hissed and bolted upstairs. I grabbed a decorative candlestick, pathetic as a weapon, but it was all I had. "Who's there?" I called, my voice shakier than I'd like. A figure stepped into the living room's dim glow. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair and a face carved from years of hard choices. His eyes, a piercing gray, locked onto mine. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded, his voice low and gravelly, like he'd smoked one too many cigarettes in his youth. "I'm Riley, house-sitter. Ethan hired me," I stammered, lowering the candlestick. "You're not supposed to be here." He dropped a duffel bag with a thud. "I'm Marcus, Ethan's dad, and this is my house." His gaze swept over me, sharp and unyielding, like he was sizing up an intruder. I felt exposed, my oversized hoodie and ripped jeans suddenly inadequate. Marcus wasn't what I'd pictured. Ethan had described his dad as a distant workaholic, always traveling for some vague consulting job. But this man radiated presence, like he could command a room without trying. "Didn't Ethan tell you I might come back early?" Marcus asked, peeling off a rain-soaked jacket. His white shirt clung to his frame, hinting at muscle earned from more than desk work. "No," I said, crossing my arms. "He didn't mention you at all." Marcus snorted, a half-smile tugging at his lips. "Sounds like my son." He moved to the kitchen, pulling a beer from the fridge like he owned the place, which technically he did. "You want one?" I hesitated. I wasn't here to socialize, but something about his casual confidence made me want to stay in the room, not flee it. "Sure," I said, catching the bottle he tossed me. We sat at opposite ends of the kitchen island, the silence heavy but not uncomfortable. Outside, the storm raged on, a perfect mirror to the unease churning in my gut. Marcus broke the quiet. "So, Riley, what's your deal? You don't look like the usual college kid Ethan hires." "I'm not a kid," I shot back, maybe too quickly. "I'm 24, barista, trying to figure out life, I guess." I didn't mention the part about being non-binary, about the pronouns I used, they slashed them, or how I'd left Nebraska to escape a family that saw me as a puzzle they couldn't solve. "Not yet." He nodded like he heard more than I said. "Life's a tough bastard to figure out. Took me years to realize I was running from it instead of living it." His eyes softened, and for a moment, I saw something raw, regret, maybe, or longing. The next few days were a strange dance. Marcus was home more than I expected, working from an office upstairs, his presence filling the house like a low hum. I caught myself watching him. How he moved with purpose, how his laugh lines deepened when he talked about his travels. He was 45, old enough to be my dad, but there was nothing paternal about the heat in my chest when he brushed past me in the hallway. One evening, I was watering the garden when Marcus joined me, a glass of whiskey in hand. The air was thick with the scent of blooming lilacs. "You're good at this," he said, nodding at the plants. "Ethan says you're reliable. Rare these days." I shrugged, my cheeks warming. "Just trying not to screw it up." I paused, then took a risk. "What about you? Why'd you come back early?" His jaw tightened. "Business trip got canceled. And maybe I needed to be here." He looked at me, really looked, and my breath caught. There was a weight to his gaze, like he was seeing me. Not just the barista, not just the house sitter, but me. That night I couldn't sleep. Marcus's words echoed in my mind, tangled with the way his hand had grazed mine when he handed me a towel earlier. I was in over my head, and I knew it. He was my boss's dad, straight as far as I knew, and way out of my league. But something about him felt like a door I wanted to walk through, even if it led somewhere dangerous. By day 4, the tension was unbearable. We were in the kitchen, me chopping vegetables for a late dinner, him leaning against the counter, telling stories about his time in Seoul. His voice was low, intimate, like he was sharing secrets. "You ever been in love, Riley?" he asked suddenly. I froze, the knife hovering over a carrot. "Once. Didn't end well. My ex, Jamie, had been my first everything. First love, first heartbreak. They'd left me for someone less complicated, they said. I hadn't dated since." Marcus nodded like he understood. "Love's a minefield. I've been dodging it for years." He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, woodsy, warm. "But sometimes, it sneaks up on you." My heart pounded. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached past me for a glass, his arm brushing mine. The touch lingered, electric. I turned, and our eyes locked, the air between us crackling with something unspoken. I wanted to say something, anything, but words felt too small for whatever this was. Then the phone rang, Ethan checking in. The moment shattered. Marcus stepped back, his face unreadable, and I was left wondering if I'd imagined it all. But as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I knew one thing for sure. Marcus Caldwell was trouble, and I was already caught in his orbit. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Marcus humming in the kitchen. It was a low, gravelly tune, something old school, maybe Springsteen. I lingered in the guest room, my heart racing at the thought of facing him after last night's almost moment. I wasn't sure what scared me more, that I'd misread him, or that I hadn't. Downstairs, Marcus was flipping pancakes, his sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle. He glanced up, his gray eyes catching the morning light. "Morning, Riley. Hungry?" I nodded, sliding onto a stool. "You cook?" "When I'm home, which isn't often." He slid a plate toward me, stacked with pancakes and bacon. "Eat, you're too skinny." I laughed, despite the nerves knotting my stomach. "Thanks, I think." We ate in silence, but it wasn't awkward. It was comfortable, like we'd done this 100 times. I stole glances at him, noting the way his jaw worked as he chewed, the faint scar above his eyebrow. He was handsome in a rugged, lived-in way, not like the polished guys I saw at the coffee shop. After breakfast, Marcus suggested we take Muffin to the vet for a checkup. "Ethan's been slacking on it," he said, grabbing the cat carrier. I didn't argue, partly because it was his house, partly because I wanted to see where this day would lead. The vet's office was in a strip mall, all fluorescent lights and dog posters. Marcus carried Muffin's carrier like it weighed nothing, his presence drawing eyes from the receptionist to the other pet owners. I felt a strange pride walking beside him, like we were a unit, even if just for an hour. While we waited, he told me about his life. Consulting for tech firms, always on the move, no time for roots. Sounds lonely, I said, before I could stop myself. He looked at me, surprised. It is, but I'm used to it. His voice was softer now, vulnerable. What about you? You seem untethered. I swallowed hard. I left home because my family didn't get me. Being non-binary in Nebraska? Not exactly a party. Denver's better, but it's still hard to find people who see you for you. Marcus nodded, his gaze steady. I see you, Riley. My breath hitched. Before I could respond, the vet called us in. The moment passed, but his words lingered, warming me like the Colorado sun. Back at the house, we fell into a rhythm. I tended the garden. Marcus fixed a leaky faucet. We talked about music. He loved jazz. I was into indie. About dreams. I wanted to open my own cafe. He wanted to slow down but didn't know how. Every conversation felt like peeling back layers, revealing parts of ourselves we'd kept hidden. I told him about my pronouns, bracing for judgment, but he just nodded. Good to know, he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. That evening, we ended up in the backyard, sitting on a wooden swing Ethan's mom had installed years ago. The air was warm, fireflies flickering around us. Marcus handed me a beer, his fingers brushing mine. This time, neither of us pulled away. You're not what I expected, Riley, he said, his voice low. What did you expect? I asked, my heart pounding. Someone less real. He turned to me, his face inches from mine. You make me want to stay still for once. I froze, caught in his gaze. The world narrowed to the space between us, the swing creaking softly. I wanted to lean in, to close the gap, but fear held me back. He was my boss's dad. He was 45. He was everything I shouldn't want. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face darkening. It's Ethan, he said, standing abruptly. I need to take this. He walked inside, leaving me on the swing, my heart a tangled mess. The next day, Marcus was different, distant, preoccupied. He spent hours in his office, door closed. I tried to focus on my tasks, but my mind kept replaying his words, his touch. Was I imagining the connection, or was he pulling back because he felt it too? That night, I found him in the living room, staring at a photo of him and Ethan from years ago. Everything okay? I asked, sitting beside him. He sighed. Ethan's mom and we split when he was a kid. I wasn't around much. Work kept me away, but that's just an excuse. I failed him. I touched his arm, tentative. You're here now. He looked at me, his eyes raw. I don't deserve now, but you make me want to try. His hand covered mine, warm and steady. My pulse raced, and for a moment, I thought he might kiss me. But he pulled back, standing quickly. I'm sorry, Riley. It's complicated. I wanted to argue, to tell him I didn't care about complicated. But he was already halfway up the stairs, leaving me with the weight of what we hadn't said. The house felt colder after Marcus's retreat. I went through the motions, feeding Muffin, watering plants, but my mind was a storm of what-ifs. Had I pushed too far? Was Marcus wrestling with the same pull I felt? Or was I just a lonely kid misreading kindness for something more? By noon, I couldn't take the silence. I knocked on his office door, heart in my throat. Marcus, can we talk? He opened the door, looking tired, his hair disheveled. "Riley," he sighed, stepping aside. "Come in." His office was a chaos of papers and laptop screens, a stark contrast to the rest of the pristine house. I sat on a leather chair, clutching my knees. "What's going on? You've been avoiding me." He leaned against his desk, arms crossed. "I'm trying to do the right thing. You're young, Riley. You're Ethan's employee. I'm not supposed to feel this way." My breath caught. "Feel what?" He looked away, jaw tight. "You know what? Don't make me say it." "I need you to," I said, standing. "Because I'm going crazy here, Marcus. I feel something, and I think you do too. But if I'm wrong, tell me now." He met my eyes, and the rawness there stole my breath. "You're not wrong," he said quietly. "But this can't happen. I'm too old for you. And Ethan, he'd never understand. Ethan doesn't get to decide my life," I shot back. "Or yours." Marcus laughed, a bitter sound. "You think it's that simple? I've spent years running from connections because they hurt. My ex-wife, Ethan, every relationship I've had. I screw it up. I won't do that to you." I stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of green in his gray eyes. "What if I'm willing to take that risk?" For a moment he didn't move. Then his hand cupped my cheek, his thumb brushing my skin. "You're braver than I am," he whispered. Before I could respond, he kissed me, soft at first, then desperate, like he was drowning and I was air. My hands found his shoulders, pulling him closer, the world falling away. The kiss ended too soon. Marcus pulled back, his forehead resting against mine. "This is a mistake," he said, but his hands stayed on my waist. "Then let's make it," I said, my voice shaking. "Just for now." We didn't talk after that. We sat on the floor, his arm around me, the silence saying more than words could. But the weight of reality lingered. Ethan would be back in a week. Marcus was still his dad, and I was still the house sitter, caught in a moment that couldn't last. The next day, Marcus took me to a jazz club in 5 Points, a place he'd loved in his 20s. The music was sultry, the crowd diverse, black, white, queer, straight, all swaying to the same rhythm. We sat in a corner booth, our knees touching under the table. "This place saved me when I was your age," Marcus said, his eyes distant. "I was figuring out who I was. Never thought I'd be here with someone like you." "Someone like me?" I teased, sipping my drink. "Someone who makes me question everything," he said, his hand finding mine. I've only been with women. But you're different." I squeezed his hand. "I'm just me, Marcus. Non-binary, messy, trying to figure it out. Same as you." He smiled, a real one this time. "Maybe that's why this feels right." But right was fragile. That night, Ethan called again, his voice sharp through the phone. I caught fragments, something about Marcus needing to sign papers, about family drama I didn't understand. Marcus's face grew stormy, and when he hung up, he didn't meet my eyes. "I need to handle some things," he said, heading upstairs. I stayed up, waiting, but he didn't come back down. The next morning, he was gone before I woke up. A note on the counter. "Had to meet a client. Back tonight. M." My stomach twisted. Was he running again? By evening, he returned, but the warmth was gone. "Riley, we need to talk," he said, his voice flat. It's not fair to you. I'm leaving tomorrow." "Work." I felt like I'd been punched. "You're running." He flinched. "I'm trying to protect you. You deserve someone who can stay. And you deserve someone who sees you," I said, tears burning my eyes. "Don't do this, Marcus." But he did. He packed his bag, and by morning, he was gone. leaving me alone in a house that felt too big, too empty, with only Muffin and my regrets for company. Marcus's absence left a void I couldn't ignore. The house, once warm with our shared moments, felt like a museum of what could have been. I went through my tasks mechanically, watering plants, feeding Muffin, but every creak of the floorboards reminded me of him. His laugh, his touch, the way he'd looked at me like I was worth seeing. I tried to distract myself. I called my friend Sam, a trans artist who always knew how to pull me out of a spiral. We met at a diner in Capitol Hill, where I spilled everything over greasy fries. "Riley, you're in deep," Sam said, their eyes kind but worried. "This guy's got baggage, and he's your boss's dad. That's a whole soap opera." "I know," I groaned, rubbing my temples. "But it felt real, Sam. Like maybe I was enough for someone. For once." Sam reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "You are enough. But you can't make him see that if he's running scared." Back at the house, I found a voicemail from Ethan. "Riley, everything okay? Dad said he was there for a bit. Hope he didn't cause trouble." I stared at the phone, tempted to tell Ethan everything, to burn it all down. But I didn't. Instead, I texted Marcus, "You didn't have to leave. Talk to me." No reply. The next few days were a blur. I threw myself into work, picking up extra shifts at the coffee shop, hoping the chaos would drown out the ache. But every quiet moment brought Marcus back. His voice, his hands, the way he'd made me feel alive. I hated how much I missed him, how much I wanted him to fight for this. For us. Then, on the 6th day, a letter arrived, tucked into the mailbox with no return address. My name was scrawled in Marcus's sharp handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Riley, I'm sorry. I've spent my life avoiding things that scare me, and you scare the hell out of me. Not because of who you are, but because of what you make me feel. I'm in Chicago for work, but I can't stop thinking about you. I don't know if I'm brave enough for this, but I want to be." Marcus. My heart raced. He hadn't given up. Not completely. I clutched the letter, torn between hope and fear. What did this mean? Was he coming back? Did I even want him to after he'd run? That night, I sat in the backyard, staring at the swing where we'd shared that perfect moment. I wanted to hate him for leaving, but I couldn't. I understood running. I'd done it when I left Nebraska, when I left Jamie. Maybe Marcus wasn't so different from me. Both of us scared of what it meant to be seen. The next morning, Ethan called to say they'd be back early, tomorrow. My time in the house was almost up, and with it, any chance of resolving whatever this was with Marcus. I spent the day cleaning, erasing traces of myself, but I couldn't erase the memories. The kitchen where we'd talked until midnight. The garden where he'd watched me with that quiet intensity. The swing where we'd almost kissed again. As I packed my bag, the doorbell rang. My heart leapt, hoping it was Marcus, but it was just a delivery guy with a package for Ethan's mom. Disappointment hit like a wave. I was about to close the door when I saw him, Marcus, standing at the end of the driveway, his duffel bag slung over his shoulder. "Riley," he said, his voice rough. I couldn't stay away. I stepped onto the porch, my arms crossed. "You hurt me, Marcus. You left without a word." "I know." He climbed the steps, stopping just out of reach. "I'm scared. Okay? I've never felt like this, not with anyone. You're young, you're vibrant, you're everything I'm not. But I want to try, Riley, if you'll let me." I wanted to stay angry to protect myself. But his eyes, raw and pleading, broke through my defenses. "What about Ethan?" I asked. "What about everything?" "We'll figure it out," he said, stepping closer. Together. I nodded, tears spilling over. He pulled me into his arms, and for the first time in days, I felt whole. But as we stood there, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway made us freeze. Ethan was back. Ethan's car door slammed, and Marcus and I sprang apart. My heart pounded as Ethan strode up the path, his wife and kids trailing behind. Riley? Dad? Ethan's brow furrowed, his eyes darting between us. What's going on? Marcus cleared his throat. Just catching up. Riley's been great with the house. Ethan nodded, but his gaze lingered, suspicious. Thanks, Riley. You're free to go. We've got it from here. I grabbed my bag, my hands shaking. Marcus's eyes met mine, a silent promise to talk later. I forced a smile and left, the weight of Ethan's stare burning into my back. Outside, I leaned against my beat-up Honda, trying to process what had just happened. Marcus wanted to try, but what did that mean in a world where Ethan could fire me? Where Marcus's life was a maze of complications I barely understood. That night, Marcus texted, "Meet me at the jazz club tomorrow. 8 p.m. We need to talk." I stared at the message, torn. Part of me wanted to run, to protect my heart from whatever came next. But the bigger part, the part that had fallen for Marcus's honesty, his vulnerability, knew I'd be there. The club was packed, the air thick with saxophone notes and cigarette smoke. Marcus was in the same corner booth, his gray eyes scanning the room until they found me. He stood as I approached, pulling me into a quick, fierce hug. "I'm sorry about earlier," he said, his voice low. "Ethan doesn't know. Not yet." "Will he ever?" I asked, sliding into the booth. "Because I can't hide forever, Marcus. I've done that before, and it broke me." He took my hand, his grip steady. "I know. I'm not asking you to hide. I just need time to figure out how to tell him. He's my son, but he's rigid. He doesn't handle change well." I nodded, understanding more than I wanted to. Ethan was my boss, but he was also a man who liked control, who saw the world in black and white. I wasn't sure where I, or Marcus, fit into that. Over the next hour, we talked, really talked. Marcus told me about his marriage, how it had crumbled under the weight of his absences. He told me about the men he'd noticed over the years, the feelings he'd buried because they didn't fit the life he'd built. "You're the first person who's made me want to face those feelings," he said, his voice raw. "I don't know what I am, bi, queer, something else. But I know I want you in my life." Tears stung my eyes. "I want that too. But I'm scared, Marcus. I've lost people before. I don't want to lose you." "You won't," he said, squeezing my hand. "We'll take it slow. We'll figure it out." But life doesn't wait for slow. The next day, Ethan called me into his office at the coffee shop. His face was hard, his arms crossed. "Riley, I need the truth. What's going on with you and my dad?" My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Don't play dumb. I saw the way you looked at each other. He's been weird since he got back. And you're not just the house sitter, are you?" I took a deep breath, my heart racing. "I care about him, Ethan. It's complicated, but it's real." Ethan's jaw tightened. "He's my dad. He's twice your age. And he trailed off. But I knew what he meant. Non-binary, queer, different. Everything he didn't understand." "I'm not sorry for who I am," I said, my voice steady, "or for how I feel. But I'm sorry if this hurts you." He stared at me, then shook his head. "I can't deal with this. You're fired, Riley. Clean out your locker." I left the shop in a daze, my world upended. But as I stepped into the sunlight, Marcus was there, waiting by my car. "I heard," he said, pulling me into his arms. I'm so sorry. Don't be, I said, clinging to him. I'd rather lose my job than lose you. He kissed me, right there in the parking lot, not caring who saw. It was messy, imperfect, but it was ours. We didn't have all the answers. About Ethan. About the future. About how to navigate a love that didn't fit neatly into anyone's expectations. But we had each other, and that was enough. Months later, we were still together, building something new. Ethan didn't speak to Marcus for a while, but he came around, slowly, grudgingly. I found a new job at a queer-owned cafe, where I could be myself without fear. Marcus started taking fewer consulting trips, choosing to stay in Denver to stay with me. We weren't perfect, but we were real, and every day we chose each other was a victory. In the end, love didn't solve everything. It didn't erase the pain of rejection or the weight of judgment. But it gave us courage to face the world, to fight for who we were, and to build a life where we could both be seen, fully and unapologetically. And as we sat on that wooden swing one evening, fireflies dancing around us, I knew we'd found something worth fighting for.